Welcome back to the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. We're going to jump right into it this week. It is week 9 of the high school football season. This is Josh along with Marcus, Greg, and Daniel. As always, full slate of games tonight. One team not in business is Temple, and it's the only team in the area that has clinched a playoff spot so far. Wildcats are 4-0 in district, 6-2 overall. They're taking this week. They're not taking it. They have to take it, really. It's not by choice. It's their bye, and they get an extra week to prepare for College Station, which is basically the district showdown of the season. And we're going to start there. I'm going to toss it over to Greg, who's going to recap a little bit of last week's game against Waco, which really didn't turn into much of a challenge for Temple. And he'll talk a little bit about what's going to be happening next week at College Station.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that game last week was predicted to be, a pretty good battle. Waco had given Temple a really tough time a year ago up there in Waco, and this one really wasn't much of a game. I mean, Temple got off to a hot start and kind of never looked back. It ended up being 38-14. Temple with the win at home. So yeah, like you said, Josh, that did clinch a playoff spot. So yeah, I think Temple's been in the playoffs now 5 straight years and 6 out of 7, so that's a pretty nice run they're on. And the other thing with Temple being the biggest school in District 18-5A as far as enrollment, they know they're in the Division I bracket. They haven't clinched number 1 seed yet in Division I, but that's I'm not going to say a formality, but because Bryan still conceivably could overtake Temple for that. But the Bryan would have to win their final 3 games, and Temple would have to lose its last 2, including Bryan in the last week. So unless Bryan pretty much has a perfect finish and Temple really sputters, you're going to see the Wildcats as the number 1 seed in Division I, which is exactly what they were last year. So, I mean, Temple's in a good spot right now. And like you mentioned, I mean, next week is the big game at College Station. Last year there was a huge game at Temple. Really a defensive battle, ended up being 17-16 College Station, and
somewhat of a surprise, maybe.
Yes, it's somewhat. I mean, the College Station last year, of course, won its first 14 games of the year, so they were pretty stout. And you ended up in that game. You eventually had a Division II state semifinalist in College Station and a Division I state runner-up in Temple. So that was some very quality football. It's debatable whether either team is quite as good as they were last year, but they're still plenty good. They're 6-2, 4-0. Neither one of them, by the way, has lost to a 5A opponent this year. They've stepped out. 6A competition. In College Station's case, a really good private school opponent from Houston. So all of their losses are to quality teams, and they've pretty much torn through this district. And it looks like a district championship showdown next week in College Station. And Temple's going to be healthy. They're going to get Monto President Jr. back, their linebacker/safety. He's back off of concussion protocol, and Zion Leach, the running back, missed the Waco game, apparently kind of in the coach's doghouse, but expect him back to go with Anthony Jackson, Dejon Overton. T.J. Rumfield's playing well at quarterback with, 19 touchdown passes now. So, Temple's going to be prepared for that game, and they're going to have to play well on the road to beat a really good team. But, district championship is a big deal to Temple, and, they're going to have their shot next week to win it.
Are bye weeks really that frustrating for coaches, do you think? I know you talked to Coach Stewart this week, and he's not pleased at the timing of this, but, I mean, he's had to deal with it for a couple weeks or a couple years in a row now.
Yeah, he has. I mean, I think he's the type of coach he would like to set when his bye is, but when you're in a district with an odd number of teams, like Temple's in a 7-team district, that dictates when your bye is going to be. I mean, for College Station, they play 10 games in a row, and then they get a bye going into the playoffs. So maybe if you had a nagging injury or two, that would be a good setup. Most coaches, I would guess, probably rather play 3 and then take a bye, or maybe play 5 and get a bye. But the district sets when your bye is going to be. So Stewart kind of has a running joke based on how last year went. He said, "We'll play 8 games, we'll get our bye, and then we'll play 8 more games." So
it could be the case.
It could be the case. It was last year. Remains to be seen this year.
Yes.
I think there's a team called Manville that might be in the way in the 4th round if Temple's fortunate to get that far. Yes. But it's a nice little catchphrase to trot out there anyway.
Definitely. Team coming off its bye last week was Belton, and they had their big showdown with 8-6A rival Hewitt Midway. it did not go Belton's way. They played well, just not well enough to beat number 7 Midway, and their quarterback Tanner Mordecai, their running back James Fulbright. Those two combined for more than 400 yards rushing, and a lot of that was done in the second half. And Midway pulled away 53-32. Disappointing for Belton. The Tigers have been looking for that district title for a while now. In the last couple years, it's kind of been that game against Midway that's decided it, last year especially. And this year, Belton's district titles took a big dent. Title hopes took a big hit with that loss, but their playoff seeding is still in their hands. They can get that Division I top seed. Should they win out, they could afford to lose one more, but obviously that's not what they want to do. They have Colleen Shoemaker coming up tonight, winless Colleen Shoemaker. However, the Grey Wolves have been in pretty much every game in district so far. They have 4 losses in 8-6A, and all 4 by an average of 7.5 points. Coach Sam Skidmore has pretty much put his team on guard, knowing they can't underestimate the Grey Wolves. But realistically, this is a game that Belton should win. They are the better team, but still, Belton's kind of going in here not taking anybody lightly, for sure.
I think that Midway game, even though it didn't go Belton's way, obviously, I think that's the type of game that could really benefit Belton down the road. I mean, they've seen Temple now. They know they had a 14-point lead on Temple in the season opener, and then you play a Midway team that obviously is hitting on all cylinders. Those are the kind of games. I mean, you'd rather win them than lose them, obviously, but it's kind of if you learn the right lessons. So when you face another opponent of that caliber, which you would assume whoever Belton plays in the first round of the playoffs out of 7-6A, which is a really strong Dallas area district, that could bode well for Belton. Just so hey, if you've seen Temple, you've seen Midway, and they were in both games. I don't know if they had a chance to win Midway. They had a chance to win the Temple game. I think those losses against good teams, they'll benefit Belton down the road in the playoffs. Yeah,
like I said, Belton didn't necessarily play terrible last week. The offense went out there and scored on its first possession. Belton was winning 10-7 early on in that one as well. But, a couple turnovers, 1 interception in the end zone, a fumble on a drive in Midway territory. That's 2 possessions there that are kind of, you leave points out on the field. Belton also had the ball down to Midway's 11 when the time ran out in the first half. They didn't get any points there either. And then, Midway's offensive line in that run game just kind of took over. Belton missed some tackles, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So, yeah, Belton, they're obviously disappointed they didn't win that game because, like I said, they want that district title. But, they don't. It's nothing to feel, too terrible about going forward. They have to focus now on what's ahead, and it's Shoemaker first, and then a game against Ellison and Coppers Cove, 2 teams, sitting there right in 3rd and 4th place of the district right now. So Belton's got a lot to play for still going forward, as do a bunch of these teams that we cover. And I'm gonna shift gears now to District 10 3A1. Last week we talked a lot about the Battle of the Bell, Rockdale and Cameron Yo, and that turned out to another Rockdale blowout for the second year in a row. Cameron Yo now has 6 losses on the season, 3 of those in district. They're 1-3. They are 7th right now, 6th in that district, sitting there near the bottom, looking up at the playoffs right now. And they're playing another team on the outside looking in right now in Academy. And Marcus, you're going to be there. What is this? How many games is this now you've seen the Yeoman?
This year I think this will be the 5th time already. And I'm sure the folks in Cameron are probably getting tired of seeing me because I haven't seen them win this year. But, this is a Cameron Yo team that, they kind of have been snake bit, as Tommy Brashear said a couple of weeks ago when I talked to him then. Just things did not go right for them in their non-district schedule, little things here and there. Played some tough opponents, lost some close games, and then, district starts and they just struggle to get it going. And, last week it was a good game against Rockdale. I mean, the Battle of the Bell was kind of everything you want that game to be. Two good defenses in the first half, and then the offenses just kind of showed off in the second half. And really, Rockdale won it because they recovered a couple of onside kicks that kind of got Cameron off guard. And Jeff Miller, head coach at Rockdale, afterwards he said, it's not like we were trying that, but we know how potent basically Cameron can be on their kick returns. And so we figured if they're going to get the ball at midfield anyway, let's just kick it short and see what happens. And that's what happened. They recovered, they scored, and, there were 5 punts the first half, no punts the second half. As everybody scored on there was a score on every possession except for the last two. One of those was a fumble return by Rockdale, though. But
yeah, this game this week, you're going to be Yo and Academy. Rockdale is hosting McGregor, which is a big one. McGregor's right now 2-1 in district. Rockdale 3-0. But particularly with Yo and Academy, I mean, this is another must-win game in this district.
Yeah, and it really is for both teams. Because you look at this one right now, Yo at 1-3, Academy at 1-2. Yo has to win out and essentially hope that there's not some big upsets elsewhere to kind of get into the playoffs and assure that playoff spot. And Academy, with a 1-2 record, if they win out, they're 4-2. It's not an easy schedule for them, but as we look at this game, I think you would think, looking at the statistics and everything that these teams have been through, you would think Cameron's got the edge. Of course, you think that a lot of times about Cameron this year, and they don't. So, you can't really count Academy out. They've struggled with injuries, and really they're just trying to find some guys to play here and there. They've got a young quarterback right now leading them, Ryan White, I believe, and he's, they've kind of struggled with injury, so they kind of put him in, move their other quarterbacks around, and then, if he can get the passing game going and really get something established there, that could give Yo a little bit of problems. But Cameron, though, I think they just have too many weapons with Iverson Westbrook, Dak Andrus, guys like that. You're just looking at a Yo team that's just got too many weapons, and Academy's going to have trouble stopping them all night, I would think.
Yeah, Academy's going to have to play out of their minds on defense, and that offense, I don't think is going to be able to produce enough to keep up with Yo tonight.
No, not at all. But the one thing, if you look at this game, though, and you know that Cameron's been struggling, and your Academy, you might not have the best record. You've got a better record than Cameron does right now. So you go into this game thinking, they're beatable. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just knowing, this team is not the Cameron Yeoman of the past. And we'll see. But, yeah, I think all of us pretty much agree. What you said, Academy's going to have to play pretty much the game of their lives to hang tough with what could still be a pretty potent Yo team, even if they make the playoffs. And I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but, you're looking at a first-round matchup between Cameron Yo and Malakoff. And even though that seems to be favoring Malakoff, if Yo gets things going, it could be a classic first-round battle right there in the playoffs. So
Definitely.
Have to worry about tonight first, though.
Of course. The other matchup in that district tonight is Franklin at Gerald. First place Franklin, at last place Gerald. So Franklin looking like it's going to remain up there at the top of the district. Rockdale has got a tougher task with McGregor, but the Tigers are definitely playing well right now. Another interesting district is 13-2A1. Right now, Thrall is leading the way there, with Holland, Rosebud Lot, and Moody all at 1-1, and Thorndale also at 1-1. So that district is crowded, and any given night in that district, one of those teams can't prevail. Holland is at Thorndale this week. Moody's at Normandy, and Thrall is at Rosebud Lot. So those are some good games to keep an eye on. Greg, with Temple being off tonight, you're going to be in Salado. The Eagles still doing well. They rebounded after their first loss with a big victory last week, and on paper, it looks like they might continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a pretty stunning score from the Salado Lorena game last week. I mean, 44-3, Salado winning that game on the road. Lorena's usually a pretty solid team and, pretty competitive in district and usually a hard team to beat at their place. But obviously Leopards were no match for Salado's rushing attack. The Eagles had, I think, 420 yards on the ground. Their usual three-headed monster of Cade DePoy, Troy Shepard, and Aaron Torzinski. They're the only three guys basically who touched the ball, and they all have good-looking numbers. All up, over 100 yards or close to it. Shepard 4 short touchdown runs, and not much of a need to put the ball in the air. So it's kind of a broken record, but that's what they do. And obviously they're, those guys get in the box score. We should probably give credit, some kind of kudos to their offensive line because those guys have to be doing something pretty well to open up those kind of holes. I'm sure the running backs are good at what they do, but it's a good system because you get some misdirection, some fakes. It's not just all like, let's tell you what we're going to do. There's some deception involved because it's not really an offense that's predicated on having or needing to have great talent. I think it's tough blockers up front and tough runners, and a quarterback who can kind of run the show and keep it working.
And when you're not running with the ball, you're blocking somebody.
Exactly.
Everyone's blocking somebody.
And because of the fakes, the defenders can't just hone in on one guy. They know that, say, 2 or 3 different guys on any play could have it. So obviously it's an offense that's worked well, 6 wins out of 7 games, and I think an overtime loss in the district opener to Fairfield. So district's, kind of pretty straightforward right now. Connolly and Fairfield tied at 2-0 in first. Salado and Mejia sharing third at 1-1, and Lorena and Robinson, tied for last at 0-2. So you'd like to think if Salado can beat Mejia tonight, go to 2-1, then with a tiebreaker over Mejia and obviously over Lorena, Eagles will be in pretty good shape to go back to the playoffs. And Mejia is not a bad team at 3-4, 1-1, but Salado coming off that impressive performance last week and being at home, I think you'd have to say Eagles have the advantage over the Black Cats tonight.
Other game we're going to be at tonight is a nice little rivalry game, one with a lot of history. Daniel is going to be watching Bartlett and Granger go at it.
Highway 95 rivalry, so that'll be a good one tonight. I'll be at, like Josh just mentioned. Granger and Bartlett, a couple of teams going in the opposite directions. Granger, they started the season with 3 straight losses, but since then they've won 3 out of their 4, had a 3-game winning streak going up until last week. That was snapped with a 49-6 loss at Milano. That's a hard place to win at, but it's just what you have to do. They fell behind 28-6 in the first quarter, weren't able to bounce back, but overall the Granger defense has really shown up this season after a shaky start, really kind of shored itself up overall. And then also the offense. The offense has been clicking pretty regularly. Coach Brock, he obviously wants to fix some things, especially at this point in district. Every little thing counts. Every little detail could mean life or death when you're fighting for playoff spots down the road. So definitely wants to shore up some things. And then you look over at Bartlett, they're 1-6, 0-2 in district. They've lost 2 in a row. Their one win of the season came at Kennedy in a 34-31 dramatic win. They won in the final seconds there, giving head coach Drew Bridges his first head coaching career win. So that's always exciting, something that he'll remember. But again, the edge in this one definitely has to go to Granger. They're just playing at a higher level right now. The program just put together a little better. Bartlett not having the best of seasons. Coach Bridges, he came in, with a great past of being able to kind of lift programs and, establish a base and somewhere to kind of build on, establish a strong foundation. But that takes time. You're not going to just walk into a program that's been struggling and just change things overnight. So he's establishing a strong foundation. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten off to as quick of a start as he would like, I'm sure. But the Bulldogs, they're fighting. And this should be a good one. The old-time rivals, they they're always going to give you a competitive ball game. I think Granger should probably win this one by a couple of scores, but definitely don't expect Bartlett just to roll over. Some key guys that you'll want to keep an eye on for the Lions, Ryan Pickett at running back. He does it all for their offense. Jay Hartman, the wide receiver, he provides a lot of regular attention from opposing defenses, but he's also just kind of Mr. Reliable. Granger has a 14-year-old quarterback and freshman Thomas Rhodes, so really young, really inexperienced. But when I talked to Coach Brock a couple of weeks ago, he said it really helps having a guy like Jay Hartman because he just provides, a guy that you can turn to, and all you have to really do is put it in his vicinity, and he can usually come up with big plays for you. So it's good to have a guy like him around. And for Bartlett, it's going to come down to the turnovers. They've really struggled just holding on to the ball and just establishing and maintaining drives. So I don't know if they come out in that first half and put a couple of scores on the board, keep things tight at halftime. Maybe that forces Granger to, play a little more aggressively, and then, if they force Granger into some turnovers or into some penalties, definitely could be closer than what people think. But overall, if both teams continue to play like they have been these past few weeks, definitely would give the edge to Granger. But again, the Highway 95 rivalry, you never know what's going to happen. These two teams have a lot of history and should be a good one here in the area.
A couple six-man games also tonight. Six-man football, that's right, Marcus. Whispering in my ear as I say that. Prairie Lee is at Buckholtz. Granbury North Central Texas is at Holy Trinity Catholic. Another TAPS game, Bryan St. Joseph is at Central Texas Christian. Number 3 Lexington at Rogers, which is looking for its district victory after losing its first 2 by a combined 9 points. Rogers dealing with a few injuries, just falling short in the last couple weeks. Tough going after closing out their non-district schedule, winning 3 out of their last 4. New Waverly is 1-2 in 12-3A2, and they're at Bruceville Eddy, which is 2-2 in that district. And then Gatesville is at China Spring. Undefeated Gatesville is at China Spring. And this is the time where I usually open it up to the floor if there are any thoughts from anyone else in the room about what we might see tonight. I know Gatesville is going to have a busy day today. They have a district executive committee that they have to attend in Lampasas, dealing with a report that came out in the Waco Tribune-Herald this week on eligibility of a few players relating to something that happened during the summer. So we're going to wait and see what happens there. But they have a big game on the field tonight that the Hornets are going to hopefully take care of and stay kind of in front in that district.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Gatesville's having a heck of a season, undefeated. They started off really well in district play, but then again, it is China Spring. They're 5-2, 1-1 in district. They're coming off a loss to Waco La Vega, another 4A powerhouse. So things are going to be tight. Hopefully, the Hornets are hoping to kind of turn things around. They've lost the past 3 to China Springs in pretty convincing fashion. I think they've been outscored by about 70 to 80 points, something like that, over those 3 games. So the games haven't really been all that close. But then again, you're talking about a Gatesville team that hasn't had the level of talent like they do this year. So I think you'll definitely see a much closer competition, a lot of big plays. I talked to Coach Cooper today, and he said that as long as they can pretty much just limit the big plays, control the things that they can, making sure that they don't commit too many turnovers, keep the penalties down, and just try to keep the China Spring offense off the field as much as possible. That's really going to benefit them in every single facet. So should be a good one. with everything going on with the report, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. So we'll keep you up to date with anything regarding that situation. But yeah, again, China Spring, we'll just see what happens with that. Hopefully Gatesville remains undefeated. If not, it's a tough China Spring team, so we'll see what happens.
Greg's got his hand raised.
Just going to go over a couple of area kids who have reached some nice milestones or are closing in on them. Right now, you've got a couple of receivers in the area with 10 touchdown catches each. You got Xavier Johnson from Temple and Iverson Westbrook from Cameron Yo, both with 10 touchdown catches. And Derek Bayer from Gatesville is right behind him with 8, and he's leads the area in receiving yards with 664. Zach Andrus, even in the midst of a tough year for his team out in Cameron, is having a nice year with 25 touchdown passes, and he's within about 150 yards of going over 2,000 through the air. TJ Rumfield is closing in on the 2,000-yard mark with 2 regular season games left. The Temple quarterback, he's up to 19 touchdown passes. And then we've had 3 area players go over 1,000 yards rushing. I was going to say running backs, except Jacorian Johnson from Rosebud Lott. He's a quarterback, and he leads the area in rushing by a pretty wide margin, almost 300 yards. He's at 1,342, and then right behind him, DJ Weaver, another quarterback from Bruce Valetti. So actually our top 2 rushers in the area are both quarterbacks. He's over 1,000. And then Max Wojtek from Holy Trinity Catholic. He's just over at 1,012 yards. And a couple guys closing in. Another quarterback, Torrey Lachlan from Rockdale, who's a very good multi-purpose dual-threat quarterback. And Trey Shepard, who we mentioned from Salado, he's within 75 yards of reaching 1,000 for the year.
Check out those stats, feature stories, and a whole lot more in today's Temple Daily Telegram sports section. The final word, and the so long, is going to come from Marcus tonight. So leave us with something, please.
Well, I don't really have anything to leave you with, but Greg and I were just kind of talking a minute ago about the UIL reclassification. The enrollment numbers are due, we believe, tomorrow, but UIL had talked. They had been discussing about pushing that date back because of the hurricanes, how it affected some schools. But anyway, if it is tomorrow, it'll be kind of interesting to see where some of these are. Actually, I guess that's today by now. I guess it'll be interesting to see what some of these schools turn in, because there's a lot of speculation about who's going up, who's going down. And next year with the split in Class 5A, there will be some interest in where Temple lies as far as if they're going to be like Class 5A Division 1, who will be with them in our Division 2, and how far they have to travel, things like that. So that's always a fun day, a fun few months of speculation before the actual realignment comes out in February. So otherwise, hey, look forward to some football, fun football tonight.
Well said. Thank you for listening. Tune in again next week.